Hello, this is Daryl Goss. This is a video going to be part of my English 1301 1-131 class. So right now we're going to be going over slows, which there's 6 of them. We're going to start off with critical thinking. The way I use critical thinking within my own work so far during the semester is both during the annotated bibliography and the reading reflections. We took a look at pretty much the same essay on how to better express yourself through your essay, how to better hit your points, how to make the connections required to make something really stellar. I took this information and actually began to interpret it in much of a different light than originally was made. For the annotated bibliography, for instance, I pretty much had to come up with the 2 research questions and how this essay either supported or disproved these. By doing that, that's a pretty big contribution towards critical thinking, in my opinion. The reading reflections were more on just what the essay was saying and how it was interacting with us, the reader. In terms of oral communication skills, I admit these particular works don't have too much on it, except for one thing. The annotated bibliography was very heavy on peer reviewing, where we sat down, communicated with our fellow students, and discussed what was the best way for them to either improve their own writing or our own writing, just having them help us out and vice versa. Essentially, the way I think that went is, I think it went well. I gave as much insight as I had to where they could hopefully do better, and they did the same for me. The next is our written communication skills, which really is just the writing parts of writing an essay. That one, I admit, for a little bit, I've always struggled with writing essays, but recently through the semester, I've noticed myself improving because it becomes, at least for these papers, it's become more personal. I can use my own examples. In the annotated bibliography, I was able to use examples in my own life, how those tied into my writing and reading journey. In terms of visual communication skills, that is a bit of a different story. So far, this video right here is the closest I've gotten to really any visual communication. So there is that. Besides that, however, something I would say has tied into it a bit would be the visible picture we're painting with our bibliographies. Sorry if I keep mentioning it, but essentially from there, what we would do is we would actually describe our scenario, describe our surroundings during these times. So in my opinion, at least, I think I did a very decent job. Not amazing, I'm not gonna lie to myself, but a decent job painting a visual picture of what I was looking at and what you would be feeling at the time as well. In terms of teamwork, again, this goes back to the peer reviewing. Peer reviewing is a team effort. At least 2 or more people are helping each other and attempting to just review and give a actual constructive criticism on the essay itself, not so much on the person you like or the person you don't like, just on the writing in front of you. And sometimes, of course, people can look past that for a second and start putting in their own personal feelings towards another within the peer reviews. But myself and my partners, we avoided that as we were doing our peer reviewing, and thus we were putting our differences aside and conducting ourselves in a teamwork manner. And finally, personal responsibility. In terms of this, all 3, pretty much any assignment I would put on this portfolio would match my personal responsibility, because I myself, for not a moment, have turned in anything late, unless I was sick. There was that one time. But besides that, nothing has been turned in late. I've always been on time, ready, and prepared to turn in these assignments when they're due. Of course, there's always a bit of procrastination. I'm not gonna lie to myself. That's why I'm doing this today instead of having it done yesterday. That's just blatant fact, right? But besides that, this has taught me some degree of personal responsibility and allowed me to engage more with it compared to just working some standard office job like I was doing a few months back. And with those 6 slows covered, we're now going to go ahead and go into the writing behaviors and practices. In terms of the writing and reading process, I feel like all of these, except for the learner profile, have really opened my eyes in terms of that. Mainly because our entire process was going over this essay and first writing a reflection on it, on the reading reflections, that was a bit lengthy, but it could definitely be done. Um, I kind of messed up a bit on that and actually accidentally did 2 essays, but still, I believe it got a decent grade. And in terms of the next one being revision and feedback, this is, again, going back to peer reviewing. I use the strategy to where I look at the writing as not so much what is missing, but what it can do more of, what it can grow from. By doing that, I do see a lot of how my fellow students and myself often miss some of the most important steps because we're not focusing on the growth. We're just focusing on getting the bare minimum done. So that's something to definitely look forward to. And rhetorical awareness. Rhetorical awareness, I admit, while these writing projects did have a good part of them, I feel like I missed the mark a little bit, just personally, because rhetoric, metaphors, they're not my strongest. Sometimes I will leave in a metaphor or 2 in something, and that's it, call it done, good enough. That really shouldn't be the case, and really, one of the questions I have is how I can actually improve upon myself for rhetorical awareness, how I can make that better to where my fellow students, my teacher, or professor, I should say, would be able to further assist and further actually delve into the reading that I'm producing. And inquiry and information literacy will be our final subject. Inquiry and information literacy, that's essentially looking into the items you're reading and interpreting them correctly, getting everything in order, and finally asking questions about it as well. Not a lot of people ask questions about what they're reading. Within the essays we were doing, I was forced to ask myself and just ask questions about the essay itself, to where I was forced to ask myself, what is it actually trying to tell me? By doing this, it starts feeding into your brain, which, it's part of critical thinking. But also, it's a part of seeking more answers. I started pulling up smaller annotations, I started looking through a few things, and with it, I was able to conduct myself accordingly, to where through inquiry and information literacy, I was able to knock out both the reading reflection and the annotated bibliography. And I do suppose, before I go, just a final question I have for myself, or rather just for a professor, is what strategies within writing that I can use to actually shorten down my work? Because sometimes I do take it and I start running. It gets longer and longer and longer and longer, and really that's something I'm trying to avoid, because in the end it makes it a bit of a slog to read through. I would love to know what I can use just as a student to actually shorten down my work while still meeting the requirements, still meeting everything as a part of it. Besides that, that's about it. This is the final segment for the video, and I do hope you just simply have a safe, blessed day.